Hey everyone, it's Natalie from This and Nat, or All of This and Nat over on Instagram. I'm a wife and dog mom living just outside of Dallas, Texas. Today I'm going to walk you through 4 super easy breakfast recipes that can be made ahead and frozen to eat throughout the week. All of these recipes use ingredients that you likely already have in your kitchen, and you can customize them to use up what you have. This video isn't just about the recipes, but also about the process of batch cooking, and I'm sharing everything that I learned along the way. Links to the basic recipes will be down below, but I'll walk you through each one as I make it. Now let's get to cooking. Before I start a long cooking session, I like to get myself prepared. I put on my apron and I get my hair up. This tells my brain that we mean business and it's time to get to work. I also like to get the kitchen tidied up and the counters wiped down. This is so that I'm not making a mess on top of another mess. Here are some of the things that need using up today and why I was inspired to make a bunch of breakfast to freeze. I have eggs, bananas, tortillas, spinach, green bell peppers, cream cheese, and cheddar cheese, all that need using up. Unfortunately, some of the veggies were rotten before I could get to them, but next time I'll be sure to use them and freeze them before they go bad. I'm really trying to get better about not wasting food and money. When you're making a lot of different things at once, the order of cooking is important. I'm planning to make an egg bake and banana bread, which both use the oven. But first, I will need to cook the sausage on the stovetop. Batch cooking does require a bit of planning, but it saves so much time in the long run. Okay, here is recipe number 1, chocolate banana bread from 2 peas and their pod. After heating your oven to 350 degrees, which we already did, grab a medium bowl for your dry ingredients. Add 1 cup of flour, a half a cup of cocoa powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and a half teaspoon of salt, and whisk these ingredients together. For the next part of the recipe, we needed to melt a 1/4 cup of butter and let it sit so it could start to cool. Now, in a larger bowl, mash up 3 ripe bananas. Add the 1/4 cup of melted butter, a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil, and stir everything together. Then add 1 egg, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and 3/4 cup of brown sugar, and stir until smooth. Now add the dry ingredients, but be careful not to over mix. Finally, add the 3/4 cup of chocolate chips, and I actually decided to do peanut butter here. Now here is where I really veered off the course to make these portioned and freezer friendly. Instead of baking in a loaf pan, I poured the batter into a 12-cup muffin tin. Just make sure to spray each spot with Pam and you'll have no trouble getting them out. I'll often bake regular banana bread and other sweetbreads just like this. All you need to do is reduce the baking time to 1/3 of the original time and check on them frequently. In muffin form, these baked for about 20 to 25 minutes. Now that my first breakfast was in the oven, I did a quick cleanup before moving on to the next recipe. See, I told you this was a process video as well. The next thing I planned to cook was the egg bake, which uses a dozen eggs. But I also needed some eggs to scramble for my breakfast burritos, so I decided to crack all of the eggs in one go. Then I needed to cook the sausage, scrambled eggs, and green bell peppers. I planned to add the sausage to both the egg bake and the breakfast burritos, but the peppers and scrambled eggs were just for the burritos. I figured I could do all of this while the muffins were still baking and maybe even use one of the pans twice. Less to wash. "25 minutes later and the first breakfast is done and ready to cool. Now the oven is empty and ready for the next thing." I needed to finish up cooking all of my ingredients for the egg bake and the burritos. You really can add whatever you want to both of these recipes, but since we had sausage and bell peppers, I decided to use those up first. While the peppers cooked, I shredded the cheese. We had this cheddar on hand, which will work perfectly in both the burritos and the egg bake. Okay, now for the egg bake recipe. This is seriously just a clean out the fridge type of recipe. I followed an egg casserole recipe from Joy Food Sunshine for the portions and the baking instructions, but just know that you can throw anything you want in with the eggs to create the flavor that you desire. This recipe starts with a few things we've already done. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees, cook meat and other ingredients and allow to cool, and whisk together a dozen eggs. Next, add seasoning. I did salt and pepper. Then add all your other ingredients in and stir. I did not measure a thing here, I just dumped stuff in. I also decided to add spinach because we had so much of it. And I've recently learned that you can freeze fresh spinach and use it to make smoothies. I really wish I had known this before this video. Finally, pour the mixture into a prepared 9x13 baking dish and bake for 25 to 30 minutes. Now it was time to check on our muffins. I needed them to cool completely before putting them in the freezer, so I turned each one on its side. You know I had to taste test one too. I am not going to give you any recipes that I don't think are delicious. So now that I'd had a delicious snack and the egg bake was in the oven, it was time to assemble the burritos. Again, this is a great way to clean out the fridge and use up ingredients. There is no real recipe to this, just tortillas and whatever you would like to fill them with. I put everything I would need out in front of me to make assembly easy. I had cream cheese, sausage, cheddar cheese, scrambled eggs, and cooked bell peppers. Now my brother recently moved to Texas and said he'd never heard of a breakfast burrito until now. Are breakfast burritos a common thing where you live? Let me know below. After a taste test, I decided that the burritos really needed beans. When I freeze ready-to-eat items, I usually just put them in glass containers and separate the layers with wax paper. But before I shut the lid, I will usually put some cling film on top. Checking in on the egg bake here, I'm shaking it to see if it's still jiggly. We essentially just want the eggs cooked. Before we get to the last recipe, it's cleanup time again. I know many of you might be wondering, why wouldn't you just wait and clean up everything at the end? Well, there are two reasons for this madness. One, it gives me a sense of accomplishment to clean in between things, and two, if I get interrupted while cooking, I only have to walk away from a small mess instead of a huge one. The egg bake is done, so it needs to sit and cool for a while before it's ready to be cut, but the banana bread is ready to go in its container. Lastly, we're going to make some smoothies. This summer I've been buying lots of fruit, but as the only fruit eater in my house, it's hard to finish it before it goes bad. So I've been freezing the fruit I can't eat to make smoothies. I found a basic smoothie formula from cupcakes and kale chips that I'll link down below. Essentially, it's ice, fresh or frozen fruit, any kind of healthy flavor add-ins. I chose peanut butter for this one, a cup of milk, yogurt, and greens. The only thing I didn't add was any sweetener since I'm aiming to make these fairly healthy. I poured each smoothie into a glass container to freeze. Now, my mom would always make smoothies when I was growing up and put them in the freezer without lids. So that's what I did here, but you probably should put a lid on them if you can. I wanted to try making one more smoothie to use up some blueberries and chia seeds that I had. This one looked so pretty and red, and then I realized I forgot to add the spinach. And then I added too much. And if you add too much spinach, it can taste a little bit weird. I will say that fresh smoothies are slightly tastier than freezer smoothies, but nothing beats the convenience. Just set these out first thing in the morning or pop them into the microwave for about 45 seconds and stir them up. No more putting out the blender every morning. I cannot do that loud noise and it's too much work. Here I'm prepping the leftover fresh fruit to freeze for future smoothies. And finally, let's head back to the now cooled egg bake and get it sliced up and ready for the freezer. Of course, I had to taste test it and make sure it was good for you guys. Now, sometimes freezer things tend to stick to the wax paper, so I wonder if parchment paper might be even better. But I don't have any to test it out on, so if you try another type of paper, you will have to let me know. Thank you guys so much for cooking and making freezer breakfasts with me today. It was so much fun, and I'm really glad that I got all that stuff used up in the refrigerator, so it's not gonna go to waste. And I'm really glad that I used my blender finally. I think we're gonna be set on some really delicious breakfast for at least a couple of weeks here. Anyway, I will see you guys in the next video.